still haven't had a public press conference from Capitol Police. This morning, the head of the Capitol Police Union put out a statement on injuries sustained by officers. This morning on the Senate floor, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois read it into the record.
I have officers who were not issued helmets prior to the attack and who have sustained brain injuries. One officer had 2 cracked ribs, 2 had smashed spinal disc. One officer is going to lose his eye. Another was stabbed with a metal fence stake. He said one officer died of injuries sustained on January the 6th, and 2 officers have since taken their own lives. I want to put that in the record because in a week with the beginning of the impeachment trial, we're going to reflect again on what happened January 6th. Some of my colleagues and many people on their side are saying we shouldn't spend time talking about what happened January 6th. In the words of former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, we ought to get over it. Get over it. It's hard to get over it when you consider the facts that I just read into the record.
Aaron Davis is an investigative reporter who's been covering the aftermath of the attack for the Washington Post. He joins me now. I should note that Capitol Police Union statement was put out yesterday. It was read into the record today by Senator Dick Durbin. Let me ask you this. Did you know the stats and information in that statement before that statement was issued, or was that the first you were hearing it?
Some of those stats were the first time even we were hearing it. We'd heard obviously dozens, even scores of officers had been hurt, but to hear for the first time the full magnitude, in federal court documents, it's been listed as some 80 officers. Now we have the Capitol Police saying 140 officers were injured. And these are not just simple injuries. Obviously, several were sprayed with bear spray and mace and things like that. But we're talking about crushed vertebrae. We're talking about an officer who appears to be is going to lose an eye. Officers who were kicked and pushed down flights of stairs, crushed. We've all seen some of the horrible video of them being crushed in doorways and other places just beaten. So yeah, there's a huge distrust now among the rank and file in Capitol Police about just how forthcoming the leadership of the Capitol Police has been with the public. And obviously we still have lots of questions both for Capitol Police, but everyone beyond Capitol Police. Not only there's a picture emerging of not just acute failures within that department, but broadly the inability of the U.S. intelligence community to look inward and to see this threat coming before January 6th.
I want to go back a few sentences when you said sort of rank and file towards your leadership. Obviously, this is the Capitol Police Union. And I should say, having covered police and police-involved shootings, that you can't take a police union statement at face value. It's not necessarily true. You have to confirm it. But what's striking about this statement is that it's all we have for any kind of comprehensive anything from the Capitol Police. Like, when you say that the rank and file is distrustful of leadership, say more about what that's about.
Well, obviously, you have the chief Sund, who had been in control on the day of the siege, has resigned. You have now an acting chief. They've begun to issue press releases, and they gave a briefing to lawmakers this week, but it was behind closed doors. Obviously, as a journalist, I'm not pleased with the lawmakers on that score either, but we do know from statements and some of the documents we've received from inside that closed door meeting that the new acting chief, Chief Pittman, began to give us a partial explanation for why things happened that day the way they did and all the pictures that we all saw. And that was that they did have intelligence that this was going to be violent, but they did not act on it. They did not take it seriously. And because of that, officers were not issued rubber bullets or other non-lethal force, even their own pepper spray. Some didn't even have batons, some didn't have helmets. And so you were dealing with a force then that was outmatched, didn't have the weapons that the crowd that they were facing off with even had.
The point that you say there about the briefing, this is something I just keep coming back to because it's so weird. I mean, I've covered a lot of awful events, the shooting in Las Vegas, Orlando Pulse nightclub, Parkland, right? Usually that night or earlier, some law enforcement official comes out and says, here's what happened. We have these many officers hospitalized. These many officers discharged their weapons. These many are injured. These many lost their life. I don't understand how we don't know those things about the attack on the U.S. Capitol 3 weeks ago.
It still is stunning, really. I mean, it was left to the mayor of D.C. to issue a statement that night, who's not anything to do with the federal government, to say the Capitol's been secure, lawmakers are going back. And there was never a press release, there was never a public statement, there was never, you're right, that moment in front of the camera where you begin to get the download of what happened, what they saw when they entered the building. And I think part of this we're beginning to understand goes to this incredibly obscure oversight structure that the Capitol Police have within the federal government. And that is that they only really had two bosses. They're talking about a force of 2,000 officers, bigger than most U.S. cities. And they answered to the House Sergeant at Arms and the Senate Sergeant at Arms. And those two really had no boss other than the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the Senate. And they were always, it seems like, focusing on trying to understand what those politicians wanted, what images they wanted.
Right.
They've more or less said as much. And so now we're left with a situation where there was really no accountability there for that department heading into this.
All right, Aaron Davis has been doing great reporting on this. Thank you so much for making time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Next, I'll talk to the man fired from Fox News after he called Arizona for Joe